How's it going, everyone? So today in this video, I'm going to be interviewing one of my best friends, Taylor Sloan. He is a self-taught software engineer who is making well over six figures in the industry, and I'm going to be discussing with him how he was able to achieve what he has achieved without a college degree. Taylor has an awesome augmented reality YouTube channel, so I'm going to be leaving the link for that in the description. All right, so Taylor, tell me about what initially attracted you to starting to code and, dive into becoming a full-time software engineer.
All right. So the answer to that question is when I was young, I love the idea of having a social network. And I had this idea to create a social network where basically it would have kind of like it's kind of like a solar system where you would be in the center of it, and then the people around you would kind of like be orbiting around you. And then as you would talk to people, they would kind of get closer to your ring. And then if you don't keep in contact with people, they would kind of drift further apart away from you. So that way you can kind of see like, who are the people that you're talking to? Who are the people that you're losing touch with? And so I wanted to go and make an application that can do that. And so that's where I kind of got my first motivation to start coding. Funny thing is, I've never actually did any work to actually build that, but that was kind of the initial spark that got me to learn how to program.
I see. So you have had a very entrepreneurial mindset, and that was your main reason for kind of jumping into this field initially.
100%.
I see.
I got into the field because I've always love the idea of being able to build products that people can use and love every day. Like, when I was growing up, I saw like Facebook, I saw Pandora, I saw YouTube, and just the idea of building something that people would love. That's what really just caught my eye about the industry.
I see. I've said this so many times. Learning how to code in today's day and age is somewhat like a mini superpower. Because especially if you want to start your own business, or maybe you just want to get a job in the field, it's just such a lucrative skill to learn nowadays. So that makes sense why you kind of dived into this, because you wanted to kind of create your own products, right?
Yeah,
I see.
And an interesting thing too is not a lot of people do know this about me is I as the title of this video, I never went and got a college degree. But technically, I've never graduated high school either. So that was kind of like another thing where if you can provide value to other people, you can get jobs that, pay six figures plus, because once you get past a certain point, it's more important about what value do you bring to the table,
right,
rather than, what are your credentials, that you're going to be using to get into a field. The degree definitely does help you get your foot in the door, but if you can demonstrate that, you're able to provide value to others, that's what's really most important.
Absolutely. So walk me through, from, your beginning to where you are now, as to what different jobs that you had to get you to this point. Maybe what tech stack you used for each job, and, just walk me through all of that.
So the very first thing that I really dug down and learned was Java. At the time, probably back in 2012, I was getting real involved with Android app development. And at the time, we didn't even have Android Studio. We were using Eclipse. And when you're using Android back in those days, we were using Java 6. And so I remember buying this book called Big Java.
Yeah.
And it was Big Java 3rd edition, I think it was. And I remember trying to go, and also it was the new Boston, his tutorials on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like the guy's probably
Everybody knows
him. Yeah, everybody's learned from him. So I went on there and I was looking through his tutorials, and I didn't really quite understand it. And I remember I got this book called Big Java. I'm looking through it just because learning Android in and of itself is very difficult for me. But I decided I'm just gonna go and keep it simple, learn Java, and then once you learn that, then you can learn those Android APIs afterwards. So as I was reading that book, going through the different examples, which this book is written like a textbook that you use in college, I remember having a moment where I had this like I get it moment where things just kind of clicked. And it was funny because I remember running downstairs. My brother's working out in the garage. I go there and I'm just like, bro, like I understand this. Like understanding how a for loop works, understanding how an if statement works. Like, granted, I was still a complete noob. I didn't there's so much I had to learn, but it's just in that particular moment, that's what taught me to think like a programmer.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I started working on an application that I wanted, which at the time I really liked internet radio streams. So I don't know if many people know about this, but before you had like these things, there's this website called Shoutcast. And on here, you would be able to go and download these M3U8 files, and you can open them in VLC. And what it would do is connect you to an internet radio station where it's like you're streaming in content.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I saw Pandora and they're playing individual songs, but I really liked listening to these internet radio streams. So I wrote my first application. It was called Lucidity Radio, which basically the idea was it would connect you to internet radio streams that based on the categories of music that you selected that you want to listen to. And then as you listen to more of those radio streams, it would then bias if you can like seek through like you hit next on there, it connects you to another internet radio stream that would be similar to your interest that you would like to listen to.
I see.
And so in order to do that, I wrote a database on, I wrote a web server, that kind of a backend that at the time I didn't know any better. I was using PHP, MySQL, Apache.
Yeah.
That was my backend. And then I was using, Android with Java on the front end. And that was like a Android app. It was like Android 2.2 or something like that.
I see.
That's how long ago it was. But I actually ended up releasing the app. Didn't do so hot. It was full of bugs.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't support it anymore, but that was the very first application that I had made, start to finish, released it. Took me months to do. I learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't very financially lucrative, but I learned a tremendous amount of stuff just actually sitting down, learning it, and going through the process.
So the beginning of your software engineering career was mainly diving into a bunch of different projects that you thought would be, interesting to work on.
Exactly.
And from there, you were able to learn a ton and, get the necessary skills to, further yourself and actually land a job.
Exactly.
Right? So what was your first engineering job after you had, gotten all of this experience building these projects?
Well, before I answer that, I should mention that we're skipping a pivotal point for me, because before I got my first engineering job, I worked at two other jobs in between.
Uh-huh.
I worked at I was a bouncer, at a comedy club at the Improv.
Yeah.
I worked as a property manager, and a pivotal experience for me is at the time when I was a property manager, I was 21 years old, and I was still programming off and on. I knew more or less what to do. Obviously, I wasn't at the skill that I am now. While I was there, my dad came up to me and he said, "Taylor, you cannot continue going on like this." My property management job, I was making like $12 an hour.
Yeah.
And he said, either you go to school or you find another job.
Yeah.
But you're not going to sit here and be a property manager making $12 an hour forever.
Yeah.
Because there's no room for improvement.
Right.
And so at the time, I went and I enrolled in school. I was going to Chaffey Community College. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I made a concerted effort. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and just crush all of my classes. I was getting really good grades while I was there. And I remember when I finally met with a counselor there, I was 22 years old, and she told me that because of how impacted it was to get a computer science degree, if I stayed there, it would take me 4 to 6 years to get my degree in computer science.
Oh my gosh.
And so from that point on, that really changed my perspective, because being 22 years old, I was like, okay, so am I going to wait until I'm 26 to 28 years old? I'm 27 now.
Yeah.
And I've been working in the industry for 4 years now.
Right.
Am I going to wait until 26 to 28 to get started, to get an entry-level job?
Yeah.
Or can I make the decision now? I feel like I'm good enough now. Why not just try and get in the workforce right away?
Yeah.
So I started applying, and the job that I got, the first one was found it on Craigslist. It was in Canoga Park, and both me and Michael were from Rancho Cucamonga, so this was like a 60-mile commute just to get
Long
here.
drive.
Long. Yeah.
You got a motorcycle though, right?
I got the motorcycle for that.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, I was doing 135 miles round trip, every day. It was
Wow.
65 miles and change, or 68 miles. To go to this job, and it did not pay well. Like, they were paying me, I think after everything, it was like 45,000 a year.
Yeah, that's severely underpaid considering what you knew and what role you had. You mean
As Android developer.
Yeah, an Android developer. Yeah, that's wow. But you were just trying to, hustle, get in the door.
Exactly.
Get started. So you were willing to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. Even though I was there for 6 months, that was very brutal. Like, as far as waking up super early, I'd wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. If I wasn't out of the house, if I took the car, I had to leave by 6. Otherwise, I would not get there by 8.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
And I'd be there to clock in at 8. When I had gotten the motorcycle, still easier to fight traffic, but I had to leave out of the house by 6:40, 6:41. Mm-hmm. That was like my cutoff. Otherwise, I'm gonna be late.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I would go work out. I'd get home at like 9 and just repeat the same thing Monday through Friday. So it definitely was draining to continue on like that.
Yeah.
This guy saved me from my misery.
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first job, working at Burns Inc. in Canoga Park.
I see. And, from that experience, do you feel like, but what was the thing that you learned the most from working there, technically?
Technically, I'd say I had this tendency when I was early in my career to I guess the best way to put it would be shiny object syndrome, where I would always be learning a lot of stuff, and I'd learn maybe some new thing from reading some article or something like that.
Just because?
Yeah, and I'd want to implement it in our code base. And I remember I would cause my coworker, his name was Ali, I'd cause him so much headache because I would just be changing just way too much stuff.
Yeah.
At one time, and it was just unnecessary for what it is that we needed to do.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, again, as I've gotten more experience, just knowing how much to change, what's actually going to add value.
Yeah.
If I introduce this change, any change can have a risk of introducing bugs.
Right.
Is it worth it? Is this going to make it that much better? Or is it just like some shiny design pattern that you just decided that you're going to implement right now? Mm-hmm. And also, too, you may implement a design pattern in one page. That doesn't mean that you should go back and rewrite all of these other pages just so you can be consistent with it. Yeah. So I think, again, because the app wasn't released at the time, we were working towards that initial release. It's very easy to get into that type of mindset because it's not like you're having to maintain something that this thing works as it is right now. Yeah. And you're just trying to make the changes that you need so that you can continue having it, maybe add a feature or fix something.
Yeah.
When you're starting something new and you have that blank slate, you have a lot of freedom to do stuff, but you have to be responsible with how you use that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's good that you had to kind of, make sure you were grounded and
exactly.
He was kind of like a mentor, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So from the beginning of when you were looking for your first job to actually landing the offer, what was the time frame for that?
6 months.
6 months to land it?
Yep.
Okay.
And I got 0 responses.
Yeah.
For 6 months.
And how many applications do you think you put in total?
When I honestly think about it, it wasn't a crazy amount. Probably, I'd say probably between 10 to 20.
10 to 20. Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't, throwing out a ton of applications every day.
No. I mean, because there's a lot of things that, at least with the level of, I read an application and I'd look to see, what they were requiring and the level of skill that I thought that I was at.
Yeah.
I would be selective in, this is something seems like a very low chance I'll get hired here. This is something low.
I see.
But one thing I didn't have a degree, but I had a lot of projects.
Yeah.
I had a lot of projects for a lot of wide array of things.
Yeah.
So that was really what got my foot in the door.
And you can pawn off projects as experience.
100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. You already had, a couple projects under your belt
that
you had built, end to end. So
it would have been impossible for me to get my first job without projects.
So would you say that is one of your biggest recommendations for self-taught developers if they want to, get their first job is
I think it's impossible to get your first job unless you know someone that's willing to just try you out.
Yeah.
It's impossible to get your first job without having a track record of projects.
Gotcha.
And because again, you have no, unless you have something,
Yeah.
it's like you have no credibility.
I see.
You know, and even there's people that can look at projects and then still, you know, if they're not really digging into it, they may or may not try you out. You know, it's a fact. But, you know, if you don't have projects and you don't have a degree, then I think the chance of you getting hired is next to impossible.
I see.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, you know, when you think of software engineering interviews, the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, crazy algorithms, you know, solving leak code problems. Did you study any like data structures to prepare for these interviews, or what was your process for preparing for the interviews as a self-taught developer?
Not much, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it very depends on what types of positions at what type of which types of companies that you're going for. If you're obviously going for a FANG company, it's pretty common knowledge now you're going to get asked these types of questions.
Of course.
And there's a reason for that too, at least that I think, is it's a very quick and easy way to disqualify candidates. They have a large influx of people that are
thousands.
Yeah, that are going to get applied. They're applying all the time, and you need what is a fast and objective way to weed people out.
No.
So they do what they do. But I've worked at places that were more startup oriented. You can't, even if you have someone that's really good at these data structures and algorithm questions, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be good at building products.
Of course.
And so these types of companies that are very focused on building products, and they may not have the resources to have a huge array of teams, they need to know that if I hire this person, they can hit the floor, they can hit the ground running and start building a product beyond just like reversing a string.
Right.
And so
doing a dynamic programming problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so because of the places that I've worked at, it's been more, my projects carried more credibility because it showed my recruiters that I know what I'm doing. I'm able to build stuff. And that's what they valued more than just, you know, having the data structures and algorithms, you know, capability. So to answer your question, I haven't studied a whole lot with that stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not very good at that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I haven't practiced.
Yeah.
It's stuff that you need to practice. But because I've had my projects, that's what's helped me, you know, that's what's helped me inside of the places that I've applied to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're not going for like a massive FANG company or even a unicorn company, you know, knowing, you know, data structures and algorithms, it is important, but it's not going to be, you know, the one thing that gets you that job.
Yeah.
Kitty.
Yeah, it's when I places that I've applied to where I had to do like take-home assignments. Those actually, like, that's where I kind of understood why FANG companies do what they do, because I did applied to a place. They gave me a take-home assignment, and in the time frame that I had allotted to do it, I think it was like 48 hours or something like that. And I was already on limited time as is, just because of life circumstances. So I had to implement this take-home assignment in like half the time.
Oh, okay.
I did it, but I probably spent 12 to 18 hours because I wanted that thing to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it was. Everything about that assignment, it worked flawlessly for what it is that they needed to do. But as I progressed further onto the final interview, they decided to not hire me. And so I just thought about how much time that it took invested into this take-home assignment to do it.
Yeah.
And how much time that they invested interviewing me. If you have multiple people interviewing, you know, you're doing multiple rounds, sometimes that's 2 people, right? Imagine if you're going and running a business and I'm paying 2 software engineers an hour of their time to interview this one person. And then I'm paying like 2 project managers an hour of their time to interview this person. You may be doing 4 or 5 rounds of that. That interview of that candidate, that costs thousands of dollars on their end in order to do that, because they're taking away from their normal business operations.
Of course.
So it actually costed them a lot of money just in time on their part to do it, as well as it costed me a lot of time to do it. And we never established a relationship.
I see.
And so that's one of the upsides of doing those types of interviews is those fan company, they would have weeded me out a lot sooner. Granted, like they would have, maybe that would have been good, bad for them, who knows? But there's tons of smart people that are applying to those places. So they would have been able to turn through like potential candidates a lot quicker.
Gotcha. So you submitted the project and then they reviewed it with you in follow-up interviews. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I can see how that's a lot of time investment.
It's a huge amount.
Yeah.
And I mean, to not go through with it, I was upset too.
Yeah.
You know, it led me down a different path. I think that in the end, it ended up being better. But, you know, again, that was a huge time investment on both of our parts versus just data structures, algorithm questions. If that's what they're looking for, they ask a question, they literally, it's boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
You know, can you solve it or not?
They can have their decision right after the interview.
Exactly.
You know, because it's, you know, sometimes it's based off, did you get the answer or not?
Yeah.
Or, you know, did you struggle,
Yeah.
you know, too much with the problem? So yeah, I can see how with fan companies, you just getting through a bunch of people as quickly as possible.
And another thing is, if you practice for that stuff, you're
gonna do good.
You're gonna do good, as well as it's scalable to other. It's not much more effort to be like, I'm gonna do a Google interview, I'm gonna do an Amazon interview, I'm gonna do a Facebook interview.
Yeah.
But the take-home assignments are not scalable.
Right.
You do a take-home assignment. Yeah, you do a take-home assignment for one, it's gonna be different from another one.
Yeah.
So if you put in a whole lot of time into like, hey, I'm gonna do all of these interview prep, you're prepared regardless of which company that you apply for, because if you know you're not getting a take-home assignment, you should be all right.
Yeah. I guess the most difficult types of company interviews are if you have a project and you have data structure and algorithm interviews, which I've had that before and it's not fun. So.
I had that too at my current job, but the questions that were required of me for the data structures and algorithms were like easy on LeetCode. Yeah, so it's like, oh yeah,
reverse a string,
exactly,
do some,
exactly.
Okay,
yeah. So it's that's not an issue. But again, the take-home assignment that they gave me was like some machine vision. You know, like, do you have experience with using machine vision? And if you didn't, like, I had the experience of a project that we worked on together, but if I didn't have that, that would have been a huge ordeal.
Right. All right. So after you finished your first job, where did you go next?
So I went to a company called, courtesy of this man right here. And so he called me up one day and was like, hey, I just started working at this place called, this was his first job straight out of college.
Out of college, yeah.
Yeah, and he said that they did an all-hands meeting at the company, and the CEO was like, we're looking for smart people, so if you know anyone, please refer them. So he went and called me up, said, hey, you want me to refer you? Submit your resume. So I'm like, okay. So I went, prepared my resume, I went and sent it over, gave it to him, and he went and gave it to the recruiting at, and I remember I got an interview. I brought in, again, big thing emphasizing the projects. I brought in a project that I had worked on where it was a GPS tracker because I was having like mail thieves inside of the area. And it kind of basically was it was a hardware thing where it had a board inside of it, GPS, cellular connection, accelerometer, and how it worked, you basically arm it, put it inside of a mailbox, and once it detected a big acceleration, it would turn on from its low-powered state, turn the GPS on, start tracking its location, and it would go and provide location updates of where it's at. I never ended up deploying it, but I finished the project because of, I thought, again, it would look really good on a resume. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I went and took this thing from my previous workplace. I was going from there to Glendale, and I was passing through. I armed it, turned it on, and tracked myself from my last job to and then showed them inside of the Android app the different location updates that it provided over me tracking myself from my previous job to going to that interview.
So you brought in like a physical project that you worked on, and that was your way of kind of demonstrating your skills in the interview.
It worked for my first job. That blew their minds when I did that.
Yeah.
Same deal. It worked really well. again, if you're for software people, I'm primarily software, but for software people, they don't really know hardware that much.
Yeah.
So if you come in saying, hey, I have this hardware thing that I also programmed,
Yeah.
it's just seen as something more like, oh man, this guy really knows or girl really knows what it is that they're doing because they know software and they know hardware.
Yeah.
So that I think helped a lot and impressed my interviewers a lot. They asked me data structures and algorithm questions too.
Yeah.
Easy ones, mind you.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I'm not going to lie, I struggled a bit while I was doing it because, again, I haven't practiced it that much.
Right.
But because I had those projects there, that's what I think differentiated me from, other candidates. Exactly.
Yeah. They were willing to look past the data structure and algorithm knowledge and, they see you bringing in a physical project. I mean, that was what kind of blew their minds.
Exactly.
And I can definitely attest to that. I mean, definitely I never brought in, my own projects to interviews, but I remember when I was doing a career fair and I showed my Android apps to the person I was trying to interview with, and they immediately gave me an opportunity to interview because I was showing them actual proof of, hey, this is what I built. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's actually really good advice, whether you are whether you're getting a degree, whether you're not getting a degree. If you're just trying to get in the industry, if you have projects, show them off as much as possible because it is the thing that is going to differentiate you from other candidates.
Exactly. And even now too, even if you have a college degree, a lot of places, I know someone that went and did the college route, had trouble finding jobs because they looked at his resume and they said, where's your experience?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how am I supposed to get experience if I haven't worked yet?
Yeah.
But the difference between, other types of professions is that when you're working in software, you don't need really much to get started. I can get a Raspberry Pi, download Python onto it, connect it to my TV, and start learning how to program as long as I have a keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
And it costs me nothing.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be a plumber, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And I can also learn 24/7. Anytime I want, I can turn it on. I can go and start learning whatever it is. There's tons of resources online.
Yeah.
There's so many professions out there to where you're limited on when you can practice it, how you can practice it, or you may be cost prohibitive to practice whatever it is that you want. Programming is not one of those things.
Yeah.
And so it's not, I don't think that not having work experience is an excuse to say that, oh, this is why don't have experience.
Yeah.
So when it comes to software engineering, I believe that you should have something to show for it. You should have some types of projects because compared to other types of professions where it requires you to either, maybe if it's like working in a lab, or maybe it means having access to special equipment, or maybe you just can't practice. If you wanted to practice at 10 p.m. at night, you just don't have access to whatever it is you're doing. Software is not like that. You can go and have a computer from 10 years ago, download tools. You can download Python for free. You can download Java for free. Get a book from the library. I use the library a lot when I was getting started too. But there's probably now better even resources online. But download a book and you can learn everything that you want. On top of, you have YouTube, you have courses online, you have courses like this man's courses as well. You can learn everything that you want to online, and in the absence of having that social proof of having a degree, you need to have some type of credibility. The good thing is that you can get that now because the things are accessible. It's democratized.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I've always thought about too is that when we purchase a product, we don't go and think about who it is that made that product per se. The last time you bought an iPhone, you didn't think about where the engineer that designed that iPhone went to school.
Yeah.
You thought about the value that it provided to you. That's what made you purchase it. So when it comes to your selling your time to an employer, sure, the degree is a good source of social proof, but if you're able to demonstrate to your employer that this is the value that I can offer you, I have a track record, these are the things I can make.
Yeah.
That's a very compelling argument to say, hey, you should hire me right now in the absence of the degree.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that advice.
Yeah.
And would you say that is the best advice you could give to self-taught developers?
Yes.
Is to just push your projects forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have something to show for it, and have something that demonstrates that you can provide value to your employer. Because that's what you are. It's like you're running a business that is yourself, and you're selling your time and experience. And for an employer to want to buy that time, they have to feel like, if I'm purchasing it, I need to get some type of value from it.
Yeah.
And so in the absence of having that, a degree it's social proof saying, hey, this person's time and experience should be valuable because they have this degree. They should have the experience.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, you need other ways that you can show that your time and experience is valuable.
Yeah. So taking a step back after you aced your interview, what was like your first couple tasks that you had at this new job?
The first couple tasks were pretty slow, but the first task we were assigned was they had a build server that they had on site, and they wanted to have a visual representation of when the build server succeeded as well as when the build server failed. So it's actually a project that we did together. Is called the Build Monitoring Agent, and it was a pretty cool project, but funny thing is it never actually was fully completed, and it's
never used.
It never used, and it never was fully completed, and that happens sometimes on things that you work on. But essentially what it was this lamp that was it was this lamp, and it had a bunch of these rings of NeoPixel LEDs that were on it. And the idea was that when the build was good, it would have this water animation. And this lamp was like 7 feet tall, like a pillar almost, something you'd find in like IKEA, like in a modern art thing. And it was when it was Jenkins, when it was good, it showed this water animation. But then if you broke the build for any reason on one of these things that it was tracking, it would then turn on into this fire animation that would let everyone else in the office know that, hey, we need to put this fire out right now. Yeah. The build broke.
I see. So
on that one, again, because I had that hardware experience, I was put on actually building the interface that it would, it was an ESP8266, which is a microcontroller that has a Wi-Fi connectivity to it. It's essentially what it is. And you can buy them real cheap. But essentially, it had to go and you programmed in the SSID that it would connect to, as well as it had a protocol in it that it would communicate with, so that when the build was online, it would basically go in. When the build was functioning, it would do the water animation. When it was breaking, it'd show the fire animation. And this guy right here, he went and implemented the backend code that would track Jenkins. And so his stuff would go and basically pull the information from Jenkins and then send it to the controllers that would then go and start doing whatever animations they had to do.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about that project, it brings back some pretty good memories because we got to work on it together.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not a hardware guy at all. This guy did all of it. So it was really cool seeing him work. You worked in both. You worked in both areas. So, and you were one of the very few people at the company that had that knowledge. To do both hardware and software. So I think that definitely just set you apart from everyone else. I mean, no one else at the company had the level of experience that you had, building hardware and all of the software experience. And you had, 3D printing and so much knowledge on other topics that definitely helped you out.
Yeah, and the whole 3D printing thing, that was with the GPS tracking project.
Yeah.
I remember when I purchased that thing, granted, I wouldn't recommend it, but this was my thought process at the time. I purchased that on a credit card, and I was making $12 an hour. I think it was like $800.
Yeah.
And I remember just like, I did not have a way to pay that off when I did it.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to finish my project because, at least in my head at the time, I was like, if I have this project that's working, this is going to be credibility that I know what it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I remember I learned how to design 3D models, how to print. I got super invested in that. Just because I knew if I finished my project and I needed the printer to finish it, and granted, I didn't have to buy it. Like, I could have just went online, ordered a 3D printed component and had it shipped to me. But, there's a chance that you can make mistakes, especially if it's your first time too. You may not get the model right. So it was like I was fascinated with 3D printers as well as I wanted it to go and finish my project because I knew if I got a job from it, then I would pay that printer off.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah. So once you finished, working on these initial tasks at the company, what was your first like big role? Because, we started working on different projects, throughout our time. So what was like the thing that, you felt you learned the most from while you were there?
So I feel like it's weird because when I think back on it, it was such a lot of small incremental things of like learning. I remember the first major project that we worked on it didn't come until like later in like after like 8 months was and working on the initial POC for that. I did a lot of the front end work for that. So that was HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and at least compared to what modern stacks look like, it was very vanilla.
I see.
There was no React or anything like that. It was just literally straight HTML, jQuery, JavaScript, and basic CSS.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about it at the time, so it was but it got us what we needed to do. It was selling a proof of concept to our customer.
Yeah.
Afterwards, what did I work on afterwards? Oh, it was on the robotics project.
Yeah.
Yeah, robotics project.
Yeah.
And then I'd say in my last year working on that was probably like the most I feel like that's when I hit my stride.
And what did you have to do for just give it some context, what is and what did you have to do on it?
So without going into the details, that was more, so I should say from when I started at like that first major project was like hardware. I did a lot of hardware stuff until that front end project, which was JavaScript, HTML, CSS. Then we had the robotics project, which I know you worked on a little bit too. That one was a lot of just like integration, a little bit of C++, Python. Those are the main things I worked on, but just a lot of integration there because it was using ROS, robotics operating system for those who don't know. And then once we get to that, again, is where I felt like I hit my stride there. And that was using a Scala backend, or Scala, I don't know how you pronounce it.
No one knows.
Yeah, I don't know. With Neo4j, which is a graph database, and I was doing backend software engineering there. And that one was pretty, I'd say, easy to do that. I wasn't so much doing a whole lot of architecture there because there's other people that were handling that. That one, I was just doing more tasks were given saying, hey, implement this endpoint, change this thing. And I felt like got really good at doing that. But again, like for me to move forward in my career, I had to go into more designing and architecting projects, which I already had experience doing on my own.
Yeah.
But I felt like I never really got the opportunity to do much of that.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're at for, a little over 3 years, correct?
Yep.
What was your reasoning for leaving and where did you go next?
So this is one of the risks of being a self-taught software engineer is you may work for employers or there may be employers that discriminate against you. And so I was told while I was at by the head of HR at the time that there will never be a person that doesn't have a software degree at and you're lucky to get in when you did. And
even though you were there, you were one of the first engineers there.
Yeah, and I got hired on the same day as him too.
Oh, wow.
So, at that company specifically, it's interesting because it's like there's things that are legal to discriminate against and there's things that are illegal to discriminate against, but not having a degree is something that you can legally discriminate against.
Yeah.
And so I was restricted on how much money I can make. They blocked me on promotions. They blocked me on lots of different things there because I didn't have that degree, and they justified it and told me that because I don't have that, I'm not entitled to get promotions or increase at the same rate as the other people that are at the company.
Yeah. So you knew after this point, you're like, okay, I gotta move on from this. I've learned what I've learned. I've got some good experiences, but it's time for me to move on.
Exactly.
And there's no like hard feelings, there, or is there?
I mean, personally, it opened my eyes to a lot of things of working in this industry. Like I was known, like my dad, he told me when I was younger that not having a college degree, it is gonna, close certain opportunities to you.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, but then also too, I'm also aware that there are different there's always another opportunity where some person, they may say, hey, you don't have a degree, so this is what you're entitled to. There's other people that can say, I don't care about that, I'm gonna just go forward with you anyway because I care that you solve my problems.
I see.
And so I'd say I still do carry a little bit of, I wouldn't say resentment, but I'm a little bit upset that I kind of stayed there as long as I did, because I remember when that person told me that, it made me feel like I wasn't as good, I wasn't as valuable as the other members on the team.
Yeah.
Which, if you're in a workplace, if you're people that are above you, or HR is making you feel like you're not as valuable as the rest of the team there, I think that it's only to your benefit to move on from there.
Yeah.
Because the longer you stay stagnant inside of that position, you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to have access to opportunities that it's going to allow you to grow in your career.
Yeah.
And so I'm upset with myself that I stayed there as long as I did, knowing what I knew.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, now on a much brighter note, you're in a much better place than you are, now than when you were.
Yep.
You're making well over 6 figures in your new engineering job. So, from when you first decided, all right, I'm done with this place, I'm going to move on to my third engineering job, what was the time frame to get that new job after you already had, several years of experience at this point?
Yeah, so again, we've been friends for a long time, and we've talked about it for a long time too. I flirted with it a lot, but when I finally pulled the trigger, the interesting thing is I only did 2 interviews from when I decided that, I'm going to do it. And one of them was, right now, the company that Michael works for, my friend from my first job, he works for that same company.
Yeah.
So he had referred me to this place, and I remember I went through the interview process because it was a very good opportunity for me. And that was the one where I got denied at that last round.
I see.
And so after that, I was upset about it. But again, they're entitled to, they can make whatever decision they want. No harm, no foul.
Right.
I was looking around at jobs, but I wasn't really applying to a whole lot of them. I didn't see one that really looked like it would fit with the type of person I am. So I actually only applied to one place.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to, the amount of experience that you had. It only took, one failure to get your next job after you already had the experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I applied there in October, I want to say. Shortly after I didn't get when I learned that I didn't have that job lined up for same place you work for. And I remember I applied it. It's called and I looked at the job description, and I was looking at all the things that they required, and I'm like, yep, I got that, I got that, I got that, I got that.
Yeah.
They did say on there, a degree would be preferred, but they said also too that, this list is not an exhaustive list. If you have some of this, like, partial credit counts.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, as far as the technical qualifications that they're looking for, I have almost all of them except that thing.
Yeah.
So I applied there, and I didn't hear a response back for like a month. So I figured, I'm just like, oh, this is gone, whatever. Then I remember checking my email one day. I'm in the bathroom, and I see an email from the recruiter saying they want to have a phone call.
Yeah.
So I went and I responded to it, went through that, did talked to the recruiter, conversation went well. Then I think I had like 2 or 3 interviews. And the process took a long time.
Yeah.
I think I applied the first time. It was around Thanksgiving time in November. I did not finish that interview process until January.
Wow.
And I didn't start
That's really long.
until February 8th. So literally from start to finish, that whole interview process took about 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you only had to apply to
One place.
one place. Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that, getting your first job was definitely the most difficult?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And once you got that first job, got your experience, it became easier after that point?
Way easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be confident now, like, if you were to leave your current job, would you be confident that you could get another one fairly quickly in the same time frame?
I think given with what happened with the first place I applied to and then getting rejected as far as after, and then also with, I'd say that I would budget 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
3 months. But I'm pretty confident I'd get another one, but I would budget 3 months.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that I would be applying to today, I would probably go and apply to a lot more than I did before. Granted, when you have a job, you're not as hungry or on top of needing to get another job because you have consistent money.
Right.
My job was never in I never felt like my job was in jeopardy I felt like my career development was in jeopardy. So it was like, as long as I'm working there, it's not a super high priority because I know I can find something at a later date.
Yeah.
So I feel like, it would be easy to get another one. But I'd budget 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So based off of all of your experiences, getting all of these jobs, working on all these projects, in your opinion, what would you say self-taught developers have over college degree developers? Is there any that you think?
I don't think there's anything inherent that a self-taught developer is going to have over a college degree, someone that has a college degree, other than maybe the mindset. One thing that, it could be, I don't know how common it is if you have someone that may have had a college degree, they're used to having you have a track that you're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
You get this assignment, you do the work, you get the grade.
Yep.
And so you may or may not be learning things outside of those things that you need to specifically learn. And you may not be investing the time into how are you supposed to build a project that is well architected?
Yeah.
Because let's just be honest, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time architecting out a project that I know I'm going to turn in a week from now.
Yeah.
If I know I'm not going to maintain it, who cares?
Right.
Just get it working, get the grade, and then turn it in. But if from my background, I was kind of more of I approach things with an entrepreneur mindset, even though I never had success from doing it. Other than getting a job, I was always approaching things in the sense that I'm going to need to maintain this and add features to it later. So when I build these things, I need to build them in such a way to where it's going to be easier for me to add on this later. As well as you have to constantly learn because you don't necessarily have access to people around you that are going to know a lot more information like you'd experience in a university.
Yeah.
So, if you're in college, you can go and talk to your teacher saying, hey, I'm having trouble with this. Can you go and fix this for me? Granted, there's resources online like Stack Overflow and whatnot, but you constantly have to keep learning if you're self-taught because that's what you got.
Yeah.
But the thing that is, I think maybe just in a kind of rambling way, is to say that that's the same mentality that you're going to get when you're actually working.
Absolutely.
You're going to do
constantly
the same
learning.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to stay relevant, you need to constantly learn. I don't know if a lot of people that it's not like other jobs where it's say if you learn how to go and help people get mortgages, for instance, right? Once you learn that job, it's more or less going to be the same thing, just repeated, different person. Let me run your credit. Let me get this. Okay, yeah, we can get you approved for this.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to do that, you know how to do it. That's not how software works.
Yeah, because there's always new technologies, new things to learn.
Yep.
Yeah.
The industry changes.
And every engineering organization is different as well.
Exactly.
The tech stack that you may be using, it could change or just different from your previous job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's probably the only benefit that I at least can think of is your mindset it's gonna be shifted to be more like what you're gonna need to be when you're actually a working professional.
Yeah.
But there's pros to being I think college taught is that, like, for you you have a lot better fundamentals, and again, those data structures, algorithms.
Yeah.
You're a lot stronger in those aspects than I am. And then plus two, you've practiced a lot of the LeetCode code.
Yeah.
Even if I try and practice that LeetCode code stuff now, it would be a lot harder for me to do it because I don't have that fundamental knowledge compared to someone like you or someone straight out of college where all this stuff is fresh. They're going to do really well at those types of questions.
Yeah.
So if you're, say, trying to go FANG, you're going to get those types of questions. Not to say that you can't do it, because, I mean, he was really good and he was self-taught.
Yeah.
Not to say that that's impossible, but it's just, I think, easier if you have that background already.
All right, my last question for you, after going through all of your experiences, if you could go back to the start of your career, is there anything that you would do differently?
I feel like the one thing that I would have changed is I probably would have left sooner. I feel like I think that if I would have, I probably would have had access to more opportunities. I'd probably be further along in my career, just because once you know from your employer that they are not going to progress you beyond where you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, you continue at your own risk.
Yeah.
You already know what this is about.
Yeah.
So that right there would probably be the thing that I probably would have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably should have started looking sooner, because again, like, I think back on it, and every time when I've actually left and gone somewhere, it always was better. Things always got better from making changes.
Yeah.
If I would have changed that sooner, I think probably would have been further along.
Yeah.
But granted, while I was had a good time. Like, our relationship that we had was like a big reason of like why to stay there, because
Why to stay there, yeah.
Exactly. We had a lot of friends, working at, as well as get to work with you. We carpooled all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing where it's like, okay, I look back on all my, it was never hurting for money while I was there.
Yeah.
And then also I get to work with, my best friend at the time, at the same time. So it's like, it's a lot of reason to stay too.
Yeah.
So,
and everyone there was super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the work at times was pretty interesting. Like when we were working on the rover project.
Yeah.
And all that. The build monitoring tool was really cool. So yeah, I can see why it was difficult to kind of break away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then also, we both moved out there, so it was like having a 5-minute commute too. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
So, but obviously working from home, it just beats that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good memories outside of the actual, like, the pay.
Yeah.
And the actual career development, which is like those things that, going into work, getting to interact with everyone, it was fun.
Yeah.
But then, hits, and it's like now you don't have that anymore. Those same people you're talking to every day, even us talking every day, was like
Slack.
Yeah,
only.
It was Slack, and it was very minimal. So then now all of the hard realities of like, well, this is your career.
Yeah.
That starts setting in even more.
Yeah.
And so, you don't have those other things that are able to. I mean, it's as funny as it is, it's the company culture to keep you there anymore.
Yeah.
Now you just have. This is the harsh reality of your career right now in its current state. That's the only thing. And so it's like, you look at the numbers and it's like, yep, I'm not progressing in my career. The longer I stay here, gotta leave.
Yeah. I think, being in the office, being around, not even just coworkers, but friends, it definitely put on blinders.
100%. 100%. So, and the funny thing is, even thinking back on it, it wasn't like there was any, like, the products we worked on weren't like things that we would ever use. You know?
Not personally.
No.
Yeah.
It honestly, it was the people.
Yeah.
That made us stay, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a bunch of oil and gas things, like, it's not like stuff we're like going to be super excited about.
Right.
But, yeah.
All right. So that was all of my questions. So guys, definitely go and check out Taylor's channel. He has an awesome augmented reality channel that I'm going to link in the description. Taylor, anything you want to close out with?
I would say if you are interested in becoming a software engineer, and maybe you're thinking about not doing the typical college route, again, have projects that you work on that you can demonstrate to a potential employer. You're gonna learn a lot from doing that, and if you go that route, you'll have that credibility. That's the most important thing if you're trying to get a job, is you need to go and demonstrate value to someone, why someone should go and purchase your time. And so having projects, being able to show your work on GitHub, or if you're able to demonstrate your knowledge on YouTube, like this man is doing here, that I believe is most important if you're not going to have the social proof of a college degree.
If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also check out Taylor's awesome AR channel. The link will be in the description. Let me know if you like these interview style videos, because I definitely plan on doing more. And with that, I will see you guys next time.